Welcome to the 3 Life Lessons podcast, where I, Rob Hubbard, talk to renowned figures from learning and development to uncover the secrets to their success and find out what makes them tick. Remember to like, subscribe and follow to ensure that you never miss an episode. So Kate and I go back quite a long way. I'm not going to say how long we go back, Kate, to spare both of our blushes, but I think we first met at an organisation, a brilliant organisation called E2Train, as it was back then. So I was a jobbing instructional designer, freelance. You're in a marketing role, head of marketing there, I think?
Yeah, marketing manager, yeah.
Yeah, and fair to say, I think you came in, I'd been working there a little while, just on a contractor basis, and you kind of brought a certain level of energy and enthusiasm to the office, which I hadn't really quite seen there before. And we then went on to work together in voluntary roles at the e-learning network, as it was called back then, now the Learning Network. We were both voluntary chair members, and I saw that same kind of enthusiasm and energy and fun as well. And then you've kind of just continued to blaze this amazing career in our industry, moving from strength to strength. So Kate Graham, I'm so pleased to have you here as a 3 Life Lessons guest.
Oh, well, you're very kind. That was a very kind introduction. So I'm thrilled to be here. It's unusual for me to be on this side of the interview. So it's quite marginally uncomfortable, marginally enjoyable. So we'll see how we go.
Yeah, we'll see how we go. I hope it will come out more on the enjoyable side towards the end. I'm very gentle with all the guests. So first of all, Kate, can you tell our viewers and our listeners what's your current role and what was the route that you took to get there?
Well, it's fair to say it's been a bit of a squiggly career. I was on a webinar yesterday actually talking about career paths and squiggly careers, but in my current role is Global Director of Competitive Intelligence at Cornerstone. My husband, it's a standing joke that nobody in my personal life understands what I do. And, I hadn't done a specific compete role before coming into Cornerstone, but I have been in and around, learning tech, HR tech, talent tech for, 20 plus years. And I suppose that's what that's given me, is that view of the market and a kind of innate understanding of the technology and the trends and the headwinds, etc. So I've been lucky enough to learn from people, many great people along the way, still do. I started life, I always say I was a marketing girl that paid attention. So I did a degree in marketing, started off life at QA, who on the classroom training side, on the IT training side, moved over to the tech side with E2Train, Calidus, as they are now. And then bounced off to another e-learning company for a short stint before setting up my own business, sort of part marketing agency, part consultancy, but I could see a gap in how a lot of vendors didn't necessarily do a good job of telling their story in a way that would resonate with the buyer. So they were always coming at it from their point of view, not necessarily the buyer's point of view. So I worked with some great brands there, like Kineo and Saba. That was when we were working on the e-learning network together. One of my clients who was then eLearnity, and then became Fosway Group. So actually when I relocated and sort of stopped doing my business, I then went to work for David Wilson at Fosway Group. What an amazing, place to learn my craft, I suppose, and learn about the industry from David Wilson, from David Perring, and the rest of the team there. I was there nearly 6 years, which seems crazy when I think about it. And then went off and worked for Unleash for 2 years. So that was really great. They run events, HR tech events. What was really great about that, I think, was probably the broader exposure to other areas of the HR tech specialisms, like talent acquisition, like rewards, like compensation, like payroll. So I think that kind of really helped me spread my wings a little bit. And then Cornerstone came knocking. I've always kind of orbited in and around Cornerstone in my career. I think you can't be in this industry and have avoided them.
No.
So I knew a lot of people there. I know a lot of Cornerstone customers, and the time is right for a change. So I've been here, nearly a year.
Wow, congratulations! What a brilliant career path that you've had.
Well, like
So
I say, squiggly.
bit squiggly, but I think there are themes that you can see. There's kind of there's lines that you can see that run through that, and
Yeah.
perhaps in your 3 life lessons, we'll learn what some of those are that have guided you. So, Kate, what's the first life lesson you'd like to share today?
I think the first life lesson is, and I want to make it that balance of sort of professional and personal. So the professional way of expressing this would be networking, but the
Mm-hmm.
personal way of expressing this would be building relationships and
Mm.
friendship. So I think the big sort of part of both my professional and my personal life is the friendships that I've made along the way. So I'm just about, in 2 weeks' time, I'm just about to go on holiday with my girlfriends. We all worked together at QA 20 something
Ah,
years ago.
wow.
So we go on holiday every year. They're my very best friends in the world. But I have other close friendships of people that I went to school with from university, etc. And I always try and nurture those relationships and those
Mm.
friendships. I never kind of take anyone for granted. And I guess
Mm.
I've transferred that over into what I do in a work context as well. I mean, I have stayed in one industry for
Mm.
my whole career. But like you said, we met in that office in Cirencester a long time
Yeah.
ago, and still have a good relationship now. So I think it's always, giving, and it's not just about take, it's about that two-way street.
Mm.
And I think that pays rewards in so many ways. And even now, my kids are at school, and you get to know different parents, and you
Mm.
meet through people through different routes as you get older. But I think that's been a common thread for me, and I'll always make the effort.
Yeah.
And then other people will always make the effort back. So whether it's
Yeah.
getting in a car and driving an hour for somebody's birthday dinner, or bothering to drop a line and lean in and see how somebody is.
Mm.
My family's really important to me, but it's very difficult, I think, for a spouse or your family just to fulfill all of your boxes. And I
Mm.
find that my different friendship groups, both inside and outside of work, really round that picture out for me. So I feel very lucky
Yeah.
to have met so many great people along the way. But I like to say that I collect good people,
Mm.
um, and I really sort of intentionally do that, in and out of work, and nurture those relationships as I go.
Yeah. I mean, I've always found you to be incredibly kind of generous. You've got a real kind of generous spirit in terms of helping others and kind of giving to others, whether that's advice or time or guidance or whatever really, and all of that, and that's done, in my experience, always altruistically. You've done it because that's the kind of person that you are. But as people often say, what goes around comes around, and you kind of get back what you give out, don't you? And yeah, it's
It's
fantastic to hear how that's helped you.
and I mean, I sort of was involved in like the women in learning stuff, and
Mm.
still am. But I find now at the in my 40s, one of those big things for me is to pay that forward and
Mm.
help other people. I've had people, so David Wilson, Nigel
Mm.
Payne, Colin Steed,
Mm.
Don Taylor. I've had people really, really support me in my career. Some
Mm.
of my colleagues at Cornerstone I've known for a long time. I asked for advice, all the time, and long before I came to work here. And I I'm so lucky to have that.
Mm.
I always feel like it's nice to be able to pull that, to pay that forward.
Yeah.
And I guess one of the things of nurturing the network over the years is I can often connect dots,
Mm.
and it's not necessarily up to me to like solve for everybody's challenges or problems, but I
Mm.
often am like, well, I know a guy, or I know a lady
Yeah.
who might be interested in that or could help you with that. And to your point, yeah, what goes around comes around. I'm not looking for a short-term payoff.
Mm.
Because again, I just believe in that foundational part of building a relationship, really.
Yeah, wonderful. So, life lesson number 2, then, Kate. What would you like to share?
Well, this goes back, funnily enough, to Eat to Train as well, and
Ah,
it stays on the people side of things. I guess that's a common thread throughout my career. But David Batten said to me,
yes.
um, never waste an opportunity to meet someone new and make a good impression. And again, whether that's personal or professional, I always try and take those opportunities.
Yeah.
So whether it's meeting someone for a coffee, or I found people through work that maybe live in South Wales where I live, and then you go and have lunch, and
Mm.
then you become friends, or take the opportunity to invite some of the other parents round for coffee after school, or whatever it might be. But yeah, like, look for those opportunities. Don't sort of passively think, oh, well, nothing like that ever happens to me, or I don't get those
Yeah.
opportunities, because you can either create them yourself and engineer them yourself, or walk through doors that are open for you, even if they're
Mm.
open a tiny bit. And
Yeah.
again, you just don't know where that's going to lead you. But put in a personal, I was invited for a drink with some mums from the nursery when we first moved here,
Mm.
and we're still really tight, 6 years later. And
Yeah.
if I'd have said no to that opportunity, then I wouldn't necessarily have had that opportunity
Yeah.
again. And it's the same for work. When I get the opportunity to talk to somebody new or interesting and learn about them and what they're doing, I'll always take that time. So it's sort of overlap with the first one a little bit,
Yeah.
because then you start to nurture that relationship and build from there. But always be interested
Mm.
in people. I think I like people who are interested and interesting.
Yeah.
Um, and on the flip side of that, as a recipient, don't be interested, be curious, ask
Mm.
questions. People love to talk about themselves, right? But equally be open to sharing some of your stories and experiences, and be able to create that bond and that interest along the way as well.
Yeah. Well, you used the word open there. I think that's what this is, being open to those opportunities, open to those new relationships, open to those people. If only more people were more open, there'd be more connections, and I think there'd be less friction in the world, wouldn't there?
Yeah, and that probably comes into, well, there's two things there. So I once saw, it was at Learning Live, a guy, and his name's completely, Richard Wiseman, Professor Richard Wiseman.
Uh-huh.
He has got a luck laboratory, or words to that
Right.
effect, at Warwick University, and they do things like they get people in to talk about being lucky or unlucky, and they do
Mm.
things like they put £10 on the stairs on the way up to the interview. And the lucky people who count themselves as lucky, will see the £10, and people who count themselves as unlucky will just walk right by it. And
Wow.
it's a good metaphor for, you just don't know, you just never know where these opportunities are
Mm.
going to present themselves. So, like that Roald Dahl quote, look around you, look, the world's full of these things.
Mm.
And I come from a position, don't get me wrong, I come from a position of massive privilege. I've got a lovely family.
Mm.
I grew up in a very sort of secure environment, and that's a massive privilege. But
Mm.
there are opportunities all over the place if you look for them. And there's that Roald Dahl quote about people who don't look around won't see the magic.
Uh-huh.
I'm not doing that justice, but it's that principle really. So yeah, look for those opportunities, and back to David Batten's quote,
Mm.
put your best foot forward.
Yeah, that's great advice. And what's your third and final life lesson you'd like to share today, Kate?
I don't know that it's so much of a lesson, but it goes back to your comment about being. I suppose it is a lesson. So reflection
Mm.
maybe is a good thing. But when you say
Ah.
about being open, if I think about all of the different threads across the people side of things that I've talked about, and also my career. It's about telling your story and owning your narrative. So I'm quite open. I like to share things on social media, and I like to take photos and all of that kind of stuff. And it's not, it's not like every day what I've had for breakfast or what have you, but I like to be able to share those things. And it's the same, I guess, on more public networks like a LinkedIn. I like to tell a story about, well, I went to this event and these are some of the takeaways, and this some of the trends, and here's some things to look out for. And it's a common thread too. If I think about, starting in marketing, and then work I did at Fossway, Unleash, and then here, it's all around being able to unpick things and tell a story in a way that will resonate with other people. But again, I think you have to be a certain level of open to be able to do that, and you don't have to wash your dirty laundry in public. I'm not suggesting oversharing is the same as open, but I think but just taking control of your own narrative as well. So when I had a slightly ill-fated stint with one company and I left in just under a year, I didn't want people to assume certain things. And so it's always been really important to me to be able to, take control of that narrative, in my, whether that's my personal life or my professional life. And don't be afraid to own your story, good, bad, ugly. It's yours. It's nobody else's. So I think, and take the lessons from that along the way, like reflect. And sometimes I think in telling the story, you get that feedback from yourself, and you get that reflection, and you think, what did I learn here that I can apply somewhere else, or what should I not be doing again? And I think that's the wonderful thing about being in your 40s, frankly, is you're old enough to know yourself better and be realistic about what you've taken out of certain situations, and be able to, to use that to guide you onto whatever comes next. So I think that process of being open, telling those stories, that's always really helped me reflect and learn along the way.
Yeah, I mean, that reflection is so important, but so seldom done, because everybody's just so busy. Everybody's running from meeting to meeting, and 200 tasks on the task list and all of that stuff. You very often give yourself the opportunity to stop and actually reflect on, I've had this experience, good or bad or indifferent, and what have I learnt from that, and what can I take forward from it? But I guess from what you say about owning your story and putting an amount of this stuff out, onto social platforms, it forces that use of that muscle, that reflective muscle. I hadn't really thought of that strength of it before, but it's a way that it makes you get even more value out of your experiences. Otherwise, things can just kind of wash through and past you without you getting all from it that you can.
Yeah, it's always helped me. I mean, I think back in the days when Twitter was still Twitter, kind of having that stream of consciousness was, I still like to write notes, right? I'm still a pen and paper.
Yeah, I'm a note taker. Yeah.
And that helps me ingest what I'm seeing, hearing, thinking, whatever it might be. And sort of, I guess it sort of evolved from there. And if I can add a sort of 3.5 on to the lesson, it would be,
as it's you,
and carve that time out, go for a walk. That's my other biggest thing as I get older is I have to get out in the fresh air every day. Luckily my school run walk is 45 minutes round trip. I try and break the day up with a walk around the park, but I absolutely have to do that. And again, that is good for your mental health on so many levels, as we know. Again, it forces that reflection time. You're not staring at a screen, you're not looking at a phone. It's like people have their best ideas in the shower. It's that same principle, I think. Couldn't agree more. If I ever need to kind of come up with ideas for things or problem solve or whatever, I get out and about, and I also find it's noticeably different and better if I'm walking in a more natural environment
where there's trees and grass and things like that versus just walking around paved streets. I find that makes a really big difference too.
Yeah, it does. And that's something, my friend, one of the mums that I've met along the way, she really taught me that, and I apply that every single day. So yeah, try and make that time. And I mean, I find it difficult to be creative in front of a screen. So, I will often move somewhere else, but walking is by far the best. And yeah, because that's ultimately how we learn, is that period of reflection. My colleague here always says feedback is a gift, and he's right. But that self-reflection, yourself better than anybody else. So that self-reflection is always also really key, as well as the external feedback.
Yeah, so valuable, as were all of your life lessons. So Kate Graham, thank you for being a fantastic guest, sharing your life lessons with us all. And I'm just looking forward to the heights that these lessons propel you to in the future as well. So thank you, Kate.
Very kind to ask me, and thank you very much, and thank you for listening.
If you've enjoyed learning those 3 life lessons, then make sure that you like, subscribe and follow so that you never miss an episode.